It's coming in 3, 2, 1. On the air with FDT-TV, the premier West Ham and Arsenal football podcast, brought to you every Monday by Michael Hawes and Ian Varker.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next instalment of On the Air with FDT-TV. My name is Ian, and I currently have a new claret and blue haircut. And as always, I am joined by Mr. Michael Hawes. How are you doing?
Much better than I was last week.
Very good.
Last week, I felt absolute crap. This week, I feel crap, but better than I did.
Fair enough.
How are you? You sound a little bit...
Yeah, I'm a little bit congested, a little bit there, but as is the time of year. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. We're almost at a target of 100 subscribers, and you doing that really helps. I'm going to just sort of split my...
That's
split my
perfect.
do you know what this reminds me of? Do you remember that program, Rosie and Jim?
Yeah.
That's what it reminds
Yes,
me of.
unfortunately, I am old enough to remember
that. But we've had a few odd things happen in sport this week. We have a new Formula One world champion, if you didn't know already, Max Verstappen. Won his first, took away the ability for Lewis Hamilton to win X amount on a trot and become the most decorated F1 champion in total. Lewis Hamilton and his team Mercedes seem to be a little bit sour, if I'm honest, a little bit bitter. Despite having the rub of the green for the majority of the F1 season, with sort of the rules and the decisions by race control, I think they were lucky to be in it, if I'm honest. I'm going to take this off. It's absolutely sweltering here. I've had the heat on all day. Back to normal. Yes, so that happened. Whether Lewis Hamilton will return, that's now the next question, isn't it?
that.
Personally, I think he will. I think he wants that record.
That's what I was just about to say. Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, he's going to need to do well to do it, and I think he would enjoy the competition, if I'm honest. But that then moves us on to today's controversy. Mike, being the team that have been in the Champions League most, maybe you can talk us through the whole palaver.
Well, but I'm almost kind of forgetting what it's all about, mate. It seems like a distant memory ago since we were in the Champions League. Yes, so controversy today in the Champions League. There was a balls up with the draw. UEFA have come out and said that there's a third-party system issues, yada yada yada. Some of the teams weren't in the correct pots. And I think it affected Atletico Madrid, Manchester United, and someone else. I can't remember who the other team was. But so it had to go for a redraw. So they started doing the draw, all went a bit tits up, and realised that it made a mistake. There are people that are coming out and saying it's a bit of a fix. Some of the draws that they were saying weren't going as they wanted to. So, oh yes, we've made a mistake. We have to do it again. Bullshit is what I'm calling. So yeah, there have been some good draws. Atletico Madrid are now playing Manchester United, ironically. Let me just double check.
Chelsea have still got Lille. So
yeah,
they got a relatively easy draw in terms of Champions League, I think.
Yeah, so Chelsea did a very funny tweet, actually. Chelsea versus Lille, scrubbed it out, and then Chelsea versus Lille. Ajax versus Benfica, Atletico Madrid, Man United, Villarreal versus Juventus, Inter Milan versus Liverpool. That should be a good game. And then Paris Saint-Germain versus Real Madrid. That will be a very interesting next round of draws, I think.
Yeah, and say Barcelona in the knockout stage of the Europa League playing Napoli, of all people. So I think that's one big team potentially going out, which is good for West Ham, who are in the pot for the actual draw, which is good.
One thing I didn't realise is actually nice to see, because obviously you see teams benefiting from being the worst out of the Champions League draw and then dropping down into the Europa League. But it's good to see that they're doing something very similar to the Europa Conference League now as well. So that means Spurs are going to fuck it up again. No trophy for Spurs this year.
Well, I think there's a potentially, because they've still got a game to play, haven't they? And that's going to a disciplinary commission, and I think they'll be handed a loss. So I don't know if they get actually removed from it because it will leave them on less points. So yeah, it's really good. Lots of COVID outbreaks allegedly amongst the Premier League. I personally think they're probably just hankering for a few extra days off. There's a few teams now have had sort of a bye week because of Tottenham. And I think some of the bigger clubs are now saying, well, we've got a problem as well because we need a rest. Because although, okay, if players are ill, it will create a little bit of a problem coming back. But actually, the rest that they will get in their legs through doing a lot of miles with a lot of international breaks and quite a heavily congested fixture list this year, I think will do them a lot of good. Personally, I think if you can't field an 11, they've all got under 23s, they've all got under 18s. If you can't field an 11, then you get handed a 3-0 loss. All of a sudden, they'd field a team.
That was one thing I was going to ask you, actually. Obviously, there have been a few teams that have come out with this whole COVID crisis business. Obviously, it's no secret it's going on in the world at the moment. Do you see it happening again, that we all go into kind of like a break from sports?
No, I can't
for the time being.
I can't see it. I think they will probably bring in stricter protocols again for footballers and other sports people. It seems to be the only sport it's affecting is football. And you have to ask, is that because some of the players are mindless fools that can't stick to social distancing rules? Not saying that is the case. It might just be a little bit unlucky, but it seems to be a bit odd that it's the only sport it's affecting. Just saying. So, who did you play at the weekend, Mike?
Southampton.
And if memory serves me correctly, you said half decent result as well.
Yeah, I think the scoreline flattered us a little bit, especially from the first half. I mean, from about 25 minutes onwards, we kind of grew into the game. But it was one of those games where we started slowly, started poorly, giving the ball away a few too many times. The age-old issue of Arsenal giving the ball away and being caught on the back heel. There was a couple of times that Southampton were in, and if it wasn't for Superman Aaron Ramsdale, he definitely kept us in the game early doors. However, as soon as we got our counter-attacking goal, Lacazette, so it's one of these ones we've seen a couple of times already, played out from the back. You think it's going to be a little bit risky. A few chinky passes up the top of the pitch. And nice cutback for Alex Lacazette, and he fires it into the top right or top left-hand corner, depending on which way you want to say it, either the keeper's left or Alex's right. We then grew into the game a lot more. Martin Ødegaard got the second, and I'm struggling to remember who got the third. Give me 2 seconds. This is really poor. I do apologise.
Was it Emil Smith-Rowe?
No, it's Gabriel Magalhaes.
Yes.
Yeah, so he had a header ruled off for offside, and then another set piece, and this time got it into the net, and it stood. So, yeah, I've got to be honest. As I mentioned in the podcast last week, it was a little bit unsure about going into that game because, I mean, the way Southampton started, it was kind of like I predicted, that had they turned up on the day, or if they turn up on the day, they can cause a few problems. They've got a lot of pace in the team, but I think after we certainly scored, it seemed to kind of knock the wind out of their sails a little bit, and they never really got back into the game. So it was a nice, comfortable game in the end, but there was a few moments to start off with.
Fair enough. It's good to see that you've sort of found your shooting boots as well, because it's been a little while since Arsenal have really gone on and scored a number in a game, and you kept a clean sheet. Now, do you think? Here's a question: if Aaron Ramsdale gets injured between now and the end of the season, you're going to then start to struggle, and that's potentially where we may see some sort of dip in form or a downfall of Arsenal's upward trajectory.
Yes, and I mean this with no disrespect to Burn Leno, but if Aaron Ramsdale gets injured at the moment, Burn Leno is also on the injury list with a niggling groin problem. So that leaves Okonkwo, I think his name is, who's been promoted from the academy team into the first team this year. We saw him a couple of times in pre-season. Oh my God, is he ropey?
Yeah.
But again, that comes down to age and experience. I don't think he's anywhere near the quality to be pushing it anywhere near the first team at the moment. But certainly, yes, I do see if Aaron Ramsdale gets injured, we are going to be buggered for the time being.
Well, let's hope it happens sort of between now and Wednesday, because that would be really good for us. So, moving on from that fixture, we'll say a little quick mention: 7 debuts in the Europa League for the West Ham first team. We started with 5 youngsters. The left back and the right back, Longo and Ashby, were probably our best players in that game. Sonny Perkins up front, didn't rate him. Stood on the defender and then was shouting that he couldn't get the ball. But Elise and Baptiste did really well, and then 2 others come on. One of them was about 2'7", but he looked like he was just tearing about like a little terrier, which was quite good for the couple of minutes he going on. But we did lose to arguably what's going to win the goal of the group stage. Lovely turn and scoop from Orsic, tell his experience there. And just generally from the first team players that were playing and second stringers for West Ham, none of them did themselves any favour. And if I'm honest, I would sell a lot of them in January. There was no effort. There was no effort. There was no leadership, and there was no desire to want to win, which is a real shame. But we moved on to Burnley. We travelled all the way up there and met Sean Dyche's team. Now, just before kick-off, I did see that Ben Mee was playing, so that did sort of not instill fear in me, but I was like, because with Tarkovsky and me, they're difficult to break down. So Mee came back. Pope had the game of his life and seemed to come back to form against us, which is unfortunate for us. And yeah, we just couldn't quite get it going. Antonio's not now scored in, I think, 8 games, but he's getting in the right positions. So I don't think it's much his fault. I just think at some point the goals will start to draw in again, and that will happen. But we should have had a clear penalty. It wasn't given by the on-field referee. Then John Moss, the worthless piece of shit, he looked at it at VAR and said, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Craig Dawson was kicked out of the air. And if I'm honest, I think John Moss should be sacked as a professional referee, because there's nothing professional about him. He is the most shite referee we have. And I will stick by that. We've got a few absolute bumder of a Premier League referee in a minute, but John Moss is the worst of the worst, and I can't stand the guy. And again, it's decision after decision after decision that he gets wrong. So yeah, it was 0-0. I'll take a point because it's still positive, but we should have had a penalty.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I was watching that, I couldn't believe, and I think that calls for a bloody bastard VAR. That was one of those. I think that was an absolutely disgusting challenge, and I think when you look back at some of the decisions, granted they have got a bit more relaxed in terms of the decisions that are given as penalties this year compared to last year, because Man United were getting penalties every game. So I suppose from that aspect, they are trying to be a bit more lenient and giving the defenders a bit more leniency. But we've seen them given for less. That's the most frustrating thing.
Here's the thing, right? And I'm glad you did that intro, because on the Saturday we see Manchester City get a really soft penalty. We see Manchester United get a really soft penalty, and we see Chelsea get a really soft penalty, all to win the games because they were all struggling. And for a lot softer than they've been given the rest of the season. And then you get that, it's just like it goes to show so much that the corruption that's in it. And I know we sort of spoke about it and touched on it briefly. Does it happen? In my opinion, now it's blatantly obvious now because they've come out and said, no, we've got every decision right. No, they haven't. What they should do is come out and say, actually, we got some of them wrong. We're sorry. We're going to sort of try our best. And I think most people would go, okay, you make a mistake every now and again. But the fact they just back every decision is just farcical. And
Well, we had
Go
the
on.
same issue last year.
yes,
With in terms of VAR decisions and stuff like that. And I think the worst bit about it is that you have former professionals watching these games as well, not even referees. Former professionals are coming out and saying this is wrong, this is disgusting. Why aren't they doing anything about this? And they give us this bullshit about going through further retraining and all this sort of stuff. And granted, for the first part of the season so far, we had seen improvements to VAR, but the old mistakes that seem are creeping their way in. I mean, just going back to the Everton game. Oh, sorry, yeah, we missed that game, didn't we, last week because of the we recorded just before it went out. Obviously, it was a 2-1 defeat to us, but we were looking at 2 VAR decisions for Richarlison being offside. First one. I think even with the thicker lines, I think that one was correctly ruled offside. I can understand why he would be frustrated by that. Second one, no way was that offside. No. Not a chance.
And I think the first one, they show there's 2 different VAR angles. For one, it's clearly off, and for the other, it's clearly on. So which one did they look at? Obviously, the first or the second. But it's just like, where's the consistency in it? And yeah, you still lost that game, didn't you? And Richarlison took home the match ball, which I think he deserved.
Yeah,
he played out of his skin.
Yeah,
it's just I don't know where you go from there because I thought there's been times this season where we've been singing the praises of VAR and saying actually it's starting to come right, and then it has to come down to bad refereeing. The refs are the people doing the VAR. They all know the rules, yet they choose to make a controversy to make it so they've backed up their mate. Because actually, if John Moss had turned around and said, "Don't want to say you're wrong, but go and have a look at it," because it happened quick play, lots of bodies in between him and the ball, then that's what he should have done. Instead, he just went, "No, you got that one right, mate." It was quite a clear and obvious error, which is what the commentator said. It's what everyone said after the match. And it's just like, oh my God, why? Why are we not sticking to the basic principles?
Even as a neutral, as I said, I was absolutely outraged that wasn't given. Like I said, because we have seen it already that we have seen them given for a lot less this season, especially. So, it's very frustrating. I mean, just from watching that game, there's a lot of positives that you can take out of that. As you said earlier, Nick Pope had the game of his life. Yeah. He was absolutely outstanding and definitely kept Burnley in it. You were, I can't even remember how many shots you had. And I think even for the ones that hit the woodwork that don't count as being on target, I mean, Declan Rice was so close with one of his shots, and that was a proper dip at that one. It was just, unfortunately for West Ham, it was just one of those games that, granted, decisions weren't going for you, but you just didn't get the rub of the green on that one.
And I think we could have played for another 2 hours and we still wouldn't have scored. It was just one of them. But when you look at Burnley, they're in the relegation places. They've had a few key players out, as in Ben Mee, and they're still they're grinding out draws. So I do think they'll be all right. I think the big thing is James Tarkowski has sort of said, I want to join West Ham in at the end of the season. So he's out of contract, so they may sell him to us in January, which would be good. But he didn't play like that. He played for Burnley because I want to win with Burnley. I play for Burnley today. There's no guarantee. And I think that's something you don't see very often in a player. which is, I think, really good. But that leads us on to some predictions, because each week we do make a prediction. Obviously, we had the Everton one, so maybe you can give us an update on that. Then we had obviously West Ham, Burnley, and Arsenal, Southampton. And this week we've got another 3 games.
Yes. So just recapping from the week before, as I said, the Everton game was the game outstanding. Both of us had an an Arsenal win. You had 3-0, I had 2-0. It was 2-1 to Everton. I think rightly so. They definitely wanted it more. So, Ian, you get a point for the whole week. So that was 2 weeks ago. Looking at last week's predictions, so Arsenal versus Southampton, you had 2-2, I had 2-1, and it was a 3-0. And for Burnley versus West Ham, you had 2-3, so Burnley 2, West Ham 3. I had Burnley 1, West Ham 3. Obviously, it was a 0-0, so no points there. So a point for me for getting the correct result at Arsenal Southampton, not the correct score. So that's a point for me, 0 for you. So that moves us on to the totals. Ian, you are currently sitting on 24, and I am sitting on 24.
It's all to play for. All still to play for. And that leads us on to arguably one of the biggest fixtures of the season for us, most certainly. Arsenal versus West Ham.
Yes.
Is that your gaff?
Yes.
But that means nothing.
Nope.
So give us some thoughts. Give us some thoughts.
Okay, so Martin Odegaard, I think he needs to start for us. He's in a great run of form at the moment. Scored 3 goals in the last 3 games and got a couple of assists as well. We did see the return of Kieran Tierney. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, bombing down the wings. Granted, he did play against Everton, but didn't play the full 90 minutes. However, got the full 90 under his belt against Southampton. Yep. Sorry, brain fart. One person that we did see an introduction of was Nicolas Pepe. Aubameyang was omitted from the squad due to disciplinary reasons, we are led to believe. He had agreed a personal day in order to go to Barcelona, get a tattoo, returned later than expected, and apparently Mikel Arteta is taking no more of his bullshit.
But isn't that the second time he's been omitted for disciplinary issues this year?
Yep.
It's not good for your highest earner, is it?
And our captain.
And your captain.
So there's a lot of outcry at the moment for him to be stripped of his captaincy.
Yep.
Obviously, Mikel Arteta's trying to instill a philosophy, and I think it's a very poor example that our captain is leading for the younger players. So yeah, it looks as if potentially he might be on his way out as well. I have heard rumours that he may be sold in January, but that remains to be seen.
It's a big money move to Newcastle. He's the only people who can afford his wages.
So yeah, it's going to be a very tough game. I'm hoping that the home advantage will stand us in good stead. We did have a pretty ropey game against Everton, but I think that's now 28 games at the Emirates that we are undefeated. Again, so I'm hoping that stands us in good stead. West Ham are definitely going to be up for this game because of the disappointing result at the weekend. But I think getting back to winning ways for us will lead us on, and I am going to go for a 3-2 win to Arsenal.
Ooh. See, now here's the thing, right? If Kurt Zouma wasn't injured, Ben Johnson wasn't injured, and Ogbonna wasn't injured, I'd say we'd storm this game and keep a clean sheet. All 3 of those players are out. So Diop come in and played quite well. Craig Dawson came in and played quite well. And we've got obviously Cresswell and I think Masuaku actually started against Burnley. And Soufal. So we're not short of decent players, but not the top echelons of defenders for West Ham. So I do think you're going to score in this one. On the other hand, I think Ramsdale won't be as successful as Pope at keeping us out for 90 minutes. And I think, as you said, we'll have a point to prove and come out all guns blazing. And I think Aubameyang's going to come back into the fold, which, if I'm honest, I think makes you a weaker team. I don't think he's as prolific as what he once was. He's not as quick as what he once was. Okay, yes, he still knows where the goal is and has got an eye for it. But actually, if we played you 2 seasons ago and he wasn't in the team, I'd go, good. Now I'm thinking, get him in the team. Kieran Tierney, obviously, he's coming back from a few. I don't know how long he's been out. How long was he out for?
It was about 5 or 6 weeks. So it was just a kind of like a reoccurring injury. So
he's gonna have a race against Jared Bowen up and down that pitch for as long as his body can hold out. I think defensively he's better than Tavares. But I think Jared Bowen will get the better of him because he's not fully match fit. Same, Lanzini's played well in the middle, so we've now got this sort of abundance of players. Benrahma, Fornals, Lanzini are all sort of in decent form that are vying to get there. And when one gets tired, it's almost a seamless transition into the next. And then you've got Declan Rice, who's he's on another level this year. He's going forward more. Souček, obviously, he's covering more defensively, but will run for days. I think we're going to beat you 3-1, mate. I think we've got I think Antonio's going to come back into scoring form and get a few goals, and then but I don't think we're going to keep a clean sheet here. 3-1.
See, it's interesting you say that, actually, just because we've got, obviously, Saka is playing brilliantly. Emile Smith-Rowe, I think he's coming out with a niggly, but should be back in. Martinelli obviously coming to replace Aubameyang on the wings and Emile Smith-Rowe, and Martinelli did everything but score. Against Southampton. Obviously, Granit Xhaka's now back in the team, although I'm a little bit kind of dubious about that one. Sambi Lokonga, I think, has been brilliant for us this season. He's definitely one for the future. There's a couple of mistakes in this game, but
he's still a young lad, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's like 23. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. It's definitely going to be an interesting one.
I do think. Here's the thing: if Aubameyang's in the squad, I think it's my scoreline. If he's not, I think it's yours.
Okay,
that's the difference. I think but it's a huge swing of goals. But I do think he makes you worse. And
on recent form, I definitely agree with you.
I think your younger players, and I've said it for a number of seasons, are phenomenal, and they all have that drive to want to get on the ball and run at players. Which, when you look at Saka, Martinelli, Emile Smith-Rowe, as a front three, you go, I don't really want to play them. Can we have someone else? Can we have a Lacazette and then Ketia and then Aubameyang? Because that's much easier to deal with because they don't run as much. But I feel like it's a big game, London derby. We've done quite well in the London derbies and against the big teams sort of this year. So I think we're all going to be another notch on the belt, so to speak.
Well, if we win this game, I think that takes us above you or equal on points.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I know we're still ahead of you. I think we've only getting a point. You may be correct there. I think it's either level on points or it is some money falling out of my pocket. Let's have a look, shall we? So the table as it stands now is West Ham are on 28 points, Manchester United on 27, and Arsenal are on 26. So if you beat us, you would go above us. Manchester United obviously got an undeserved 3 points at the weekend, so shouldn't be there. Tottenham are not playing anyone, so they've got a few games in hand, which is not great, but we've beaten all the people above us this season so far, so not too bad. That moves us quite nicely on to the next game, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which follows on Saturday, which is West Ham Norwich.
Yep.
So it's very hard to predict sometimes with obviously the games coming with an in-betweener, if that makes sense. Because obviously if you get absolutely tonked, that can have quite a boost or foul on morale. obviously injuries, so it's a little bit harder to predict. But what I'd have to say is watching Norwich play Man United, I think Norwich actually played really well. And I think they deserved something out of that game. They didn't deserve to concede a very soft penalty. So I think they will come at it with the same sort of attitude, because what have they got to lose? And I think it's going to be potentially a hard game. But I still think we're going to have too much for them, and we're going to beat them 2-1.
Okay, I'm a little bit on the fence with this one. Obviously, since I can't remember his fucking name, Aston Villa boss X.
Dean Smith.
Thank you. Since he's coming to Norwich, he's definitely seen an upturn in form for Norwich, which just I think goes to show that over possibly the course of this season. I mean, we saw Wagner in the Premier League previously, and I think they were one of the worst sides, and they were up and straight back down. So he's definitely a championship manager. I think when Norwich got promoted this season, they should have kind of parted ways and then looked to recruit a more experienced manager.
Yep.
However, saying that, looking at some of the performances that Norwich have put out recently, I think they've been a bit unfortunate with a couple of the results, but I think you have definitely seen improvements.
Yeah.
I think depending on what happens on Wednesday, because it's a fairly quick turnaround, obviously with the Christmas period coming up, I think this is going to be a potential banana skin for West Ham. I don't mean a loss, but I think Norwich are going to do well because they seem to have kind of like bolstered up really well defensively, which I think for Norwich is one of the things that they've been lacking. Certainly in the Premier League or the recent Premier League era is the lack of defensive capabilities, and obviously we've seen some improvements, and he's managed to get them kind of bolstered up a bit. I'm going to go for 1-1 on this one.
Fair enough. If we get beaten by you, I'll take a draw against Norwich, just to sort of not compound, not continually losing. But then we have a very interesting game after that. Arsenal versus Leeds.
Yes, we have a 5:30 kickoff on Saturday. I've got to be honest, this again could be a banana skin fixture. Sorry, this is Leeds versus Arsenal, not Arsenal Leeds. But anyway, yeah, it's again Leeds are a team that have been a bit hit miss in form this season. But when they play well, they play really, really well. Obviously, just coming off the back of a loss against Chelsea, as you mentioned, quite unfortunate in that game. So they can go toe to toe with some of the big hitters in the Premier League. Not saying that we're big hitters by any stretch of the imagination. I think our position is kind of reflective of where we are at the moment.
Yep.
This for me is going to depend on how much or what result we have against you boys.
Yeah.
From going from my score prediction, I think there's going to be, it's going to be a lot of pressure on us to have effectively three consecutive wins on a bounce. And Leeds, like I said, they can put up a really good fight. I'm going to go for a draw on this one. It's away from home. Yeah, I'm going to go for 1-1 on this one, I think.
See, I've gone 2-1 Leeds for the fact of they are hard working. So you're going to have a hard game, a tough game against us, physical game against us. Then you've got to play Leeds, another physical team, who will be itching to get a few results together. They've sort of hit a little bit of form at the minute as well. Had a few key players come back, and I think your style sort of plays into their hands. They're not great when you've got that really high line, high press, very direct football played against them, where obviously you are pressing more, but you're not so direct in as many words. So I think you'll struggle and go down 2-1.
I think it's a fair point, and obviously we saw with Everton started the game really poorly, I think, against us, and I think we were lucky, or Everton were lucky, 1-0 down in the first half.
Yeah.
But you could see, and I kind of made this prediction just before we went live, that if Everton come at us, then we are gonna struggle. Any team that comes at us and plays that high pressing game,
Yeah.
we don't seem to like it. We get bullied off the ball, we get put under pressure, give the ball away. So it is a tough one. Like I said, I think it very much depends on the score against West Ham. If we lose against West Ham, I think that will be a win for us. If we win, I'm going to go for a draw or a loss. But for my prediction, I'm going to go for a draw 1-1.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's that. Let us know what your predictions are for those games in obviously the comment section below. I have put a link as well in the description for you to be able to go and vote for the Europa League goal of the group stage. There is a Said Benrahma goal in there, so I think he is fully deserved to win that award. Have you got any other items on the agenda, as some people would say, for this week's podcast, Mike?
No, I think I'm covered. Yeah.
The only other thing, I don't know if it's this weekend or the weekend just gone, I can't remember. Jake Paul was meant to be fighting Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury pulled out. I don't think he'll ever hear the end of it. So it's Jake Paul versus Tyrone Woodley 2. I don't know if that's this weekend or the weekend after. I can't remember.
Where is that one?
It's probably in America somewhere, mate.
Do you want to go? Should we catch a flight?
Mate, I got married. I got no money left. What are you on? Those sorts of things were happening when I was still legally single. But yeah, it's not gonna happen. I might try and catch a horrible stream of it somewhere in Mexican or something. But yeah. So until next week, there's 3 jobs. There's vote for Save Benrahma. There's comment your score predictions, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. They're your 3 jobs this week, people who are listening. But thank you very much if you've got this far. I've been Ian.
I've been Mike.
And we will see you next week when Mike's crying because we've beat him. Bye.